All right, let's get right into it. If you've ever walked through a library, you've definitely seen them. Those little white labels on the spine of every single book, covered in what looks like a totally random mix of letters and numbers. You know, they're kind of the gatekeepers of knowledge, the silent organizers of entire worlds. But what are they, really? Today, we're cracking the code on library classification. Seriously, have you ever pulled a book from the shelf and just stared at that label thinking, how on earth is 823914 or PS3561.I483 supposed to tell me anything useful? It looks like a secret language, doesn't it? But it's actually a pretty brilliant solution to a massive, massive problem. And that problem really is just about sheer scale. For centuries, we've been dealing with an information explosion. We're creating more documents, more records, and more books than ever before in history. So libraries have this monumental task of collecting all of it, but how do you possibly arrange it in a way that makes any sense at all?
I mean, it seems like the most obvious solution, right? Just like your music playlist or the contacts in your phone. Simple, straightforward, A to Z. It would be super easy for librarians to shelve the books. But if you've ever tried to just browse for something to read, you'd run into a huge problem almost immediately.
Just imagine you want a book about astronomy. A book called An Introduction to Astrophysics would be under A, sure, but The Cosmos would be way over in T, and Stargazing for Beginners would be all the way over in S. Finding all the books on one topic would mean you'd have to search the entire library. It completely defeats the purpose of browsing, which is honestly one of the best parts of being in a library.
So yeah, these simple solutions, they just don't work. To create some kind of order from the beautiful chaos of human thought, libraries needed a system. They needed library classification.
At its heart, library classification is really just a system for grouping similar things together. It's a way of arranging books not by their title, not by their author, but by what they're about. The goal is to create a physical map of knowledge, so that when you find one book on your topic, you've found the entire neighborhood of books on that same topic.
And this whole system has four really clear goals. It's about ordering all of knowledge in a systematic way, bringing related books together so they can live next to each other on the shelf, and ultimately giving every single item its own unique findable address. And that unique location is identified by what we call a call number. Seriously, think of it like a street address for a book. Just like no two houses can have the exact same address, no two books in a library will have the exact same call number. It tells you precisely where that book lives on the shelves. Okay, so let's break down that call number and demystify it. It's not just one long random code. It's usually made of three distinct parts. The first part, the class number, is the most important. That tells you the subject. The second part, which is often called the book number or cutter number, usually stands for the author, which helps tell it apart from other books on the same subject. And sometimes you'll see a third part, a collection number, telling you if it's in a special section, like reference or fiction.
Now, for over a century, the world of library classification has been pretty much dominated by two major systems. You can think of them as two titans of tidiness, each with a completely different backstory and a different philosophy for organizing the world's knowledge.
Our first contender is the one you probably remember from your school or public library, the Dewey Decimal Classification, or DDC. The brainchild of Melville Dewey, this was an incredibly ambitious, almost idealistic project. His goal wasn't just to organize one library. It was to create a universal system that could logically map out and categorize every possible subject in human knowledge using just 10 basic numbers. And our second contender is the Library of Congress Classification, or LCC. Now, this system wasn't born from some grand universal philosophy. Nope, it was a purely pragmatic solution to a very real problem. The Library of Congress was getting books so fast that their old system just completely broke. They needed a powerful, flexible, and endlessly expandable system built for one single purpose, to manage their absolutely massive and highly specialized collection.
So there you have it, the idealist versus the pragmatist. Let's put these two systems in the ring and see how they really stack up, head to head.
So Dewey actually came first. He published his universal system way back in 1876. It was only later, as the 19th century was turning into the 20th, that the Library of Congress basically said, you know what, this Dewey system isn't quite right for our gigantic, unique needs. So they decided to build their own from the ground up, tailored specifically to the books they actually had.
One of the first things you'll notice is that they speak different languages, what librarians call their notation. Dewey uses pure notation, which just means it only uses numbers. It's simple, everyone gets it, but as subjects get more and more specific, the numbers can get ridiculously long. The LCC, on the other hand, uses mixed notation, a combo of letters and numbers. This gives it a way bigger base to start with, 21 main categories instead of Dewey's 10, which means it can handle way more subjects with shorter, more compact call numbers.
But the differences go way deeper than just symbols. Dewey is fundamentally hierarchical. It's built like a family tree of knowledge, where every subject has a logical parent. You know, the 500s are science, so 520 is astronomy, and 523 is specific celestial bodies, and so on. The LCC is more enumerative. It's less worried about showing the theoretical relationship between all knowledge and more focused on just creating a super detailed list of every subject it holds. It's less of a map and more of a practical index for finding books.
So look, neither system is perfect. They each come with some pretty clear trade-offs. Dewey's simplicity is its greatest strength, but that rigid structure can sometimes separate related topics and, like we said, lead to crazy long numbers. LCC is a powerhouse. It's flexible enough for the biggest collections in the world, but it's also a lot more complex and honestly less intuitive if you're just casually browsing the shelves.
And that brings us to the big question. In this century-long battle for the bookshelf, who actually wins? And more importantly, what does the future even hold for organizing information?
The truth is, there's no single champion here. The better system is simply the one that works best for a particular library and the people who use it. It's not about finding one perfect system, it's about finding the right tool for the job. And you can see this play out in the real world. Public and school libraries, which serve a general audience, almost always prefer the simplicity of Dewey. It's just easier for people to understand. But huge academic and research libraries, the ones with millions of highly specialized books, they almost always use the Library of Congress system for its sheer power and ability to scale up.
Ultimately, the choice isn't really philosophical, it's practical. It all comes down to serving the specific needs of a library's community and the unique shape of its own collection.
And the story doesn't end there. The debate is still very much alive. Some libraries, especially public ones, are starting to move away from these complex systems altogether. They're adopting what are called reader interest classifications, organizing their shelves more like a bookstore, with simple, intuitive categories like thrillers, history, or travel. It's a fascinating shift that really prioritizes casual browsing over that deep systematic organization. Which leaves us with a final pretty big question. These systems were all designed to organize physical objects on a physical shelf. But as more and more of our knowledge becomes digital, searchable, taggable, linkable, what does organization even mean anymore? The battle for the bookshelf might be giving way to a whole new challenge, the battle for the database. And how we decide to organize that will define how we find knowledge for the next 100 years.